I don't want to die alone, the boy appeared, and he still had to decide. The ambulance sirens faded into the distance, leaving only the sterile hum of hospital machinery. Robert Castellano, Bobby to those who'd known him before, lay motionless on the emergency room bed, his chest barely rising with each shallow breath. 58 years old, massive stroke. The doctors had given him hours, maybe less. "Mr. Castellano, can you hear me?" The nurse's voice seemed to come from underwater. "We're trying to reach your family. Is there someone we should call?" Family. The word tasted like poison in his mouth. Bobby wanted to laugh, but his body wouldn't cooperate. His right side was completely paralyzed, his face drooping, words trapped behind useless lips. There was family, somewhere. A sister he hadn't spoken to in 3 decades. Nephews and nieces whose names he'd never bothered to learn. A life he'd deliberately walked away from because forgiveness felt like surrender. "Sir, please, you shouldn't be alone." The nurse squeezed his hand, but Bobby couldn't feel it. "Good," he thought bitterly. "Alone is what I chose. Alone is what I deserve." But even as the thought formed, a terror he'd never known gripped his fading consciousness. He didn't want to die. Not like this. Not with 30 years of silence echoing in his ears and the weight of his own stubborn pride crushing whatever was left of his soul. The fluorescent lights flickered. Or maybe that was just his vision failing. And then he saw the boy, and what Bobby was about to discover would challenge everything he believed about justice, family, and the price of holding on to hate. If you've ever held a grudge so tight it poisoned your life, leave it in the comments and subscribe, because every story here shows us something profound about what it means to be human and what it costs to forget. Robert Castellano had been a master craftsman once. He'd learned woodworking from his father in their Brooklyn workshop, creating custom furniture for wealthy Manhattan clients. By his late 20s, he'd made a name for himself. Bobby Castellano, the guy who could turn a piece of oak into poetry. He'd been happy then, close with his younger sister Angela, Sunday dinners at their mother's house in Bensonhurst. The American dream, Italian-American style, until the day Angela destroyed it all. "Mr. Castellano." The boy's voice was soft, almost musical. Bobby's eyes struggled to focus. Standing at the foot of his bed was a child, maybe 9 or 10 years old. Dark curly hair, brown eyes that seemed impossibly old in such a young face. He wore jeans and a simple white t-shirt, nothing that would indicate how he'd gotten into the ICU. Bobby tried to speak, but only a garbled moan emerged. "It's okay," the boy said, moving closer with an eerie calm. "You don't need to talk out loud. I can hear you just fine." "Who are you?" Bobby thought desperately. "My name is Lucas." The boy pulled up a chair, sitting with the casual ease of someone settling in for a long conversation. "And I'm here because you said you didn't want to die alone." "I didn't say that. I couldn't say anything." "No," Lucas agreed, "but you screamed it, in the place where screams matter most." He tilted his head, studying Bobby with those ancient eyes. "Tell me about Angela." The name hit Bobby like a physical blow. Even thinking it after all these years felt like touching a live wire. "I don't want to talk about her." "I know." Lucas's smile was gentle but unyielding. "But that's exactly why we need to." "She stole from me." The thought came out as a roar in Bobby's mind. 3 decades of rage compressed into 4 words. "She borrowed money, Lucas corrected softly. She stole $48,000, every penny I'd saved to buy my own shop. She forged my signature on the loan papers, used my credit, destroyed my business before it even started. Bobby remembered the day he'd found out. Coming home to find Angela sitting at his kitchen table crying, with their mother beside her. The confession tumbling out between sobs. She'd gotten involved with a man, Marco, some smooth-talking con artist who'd convinced her to invest in a sure-thing real estate deal. The money was gone. All of it. Marco had disappeared. And Angela had used Bobby's identity to get it because her own credit was already maxed out. "You called the police," Lucas said, "not a question." "Damn right I did. She committed fraud. She destroyed 5 years of my life." "She went to prison. 18 months. Should have been longer." Bobby's mother had begged him to drop the charges. Angela had cried, apologized, sworn she'd pay him back. But Bobby had been unmovable. His sister had betrayed him in the worst possible way, and he wanted her to suffer for it. "And when she got out," Lucas prompted, "I told her to never contact me again. Told our mother I wouldn't come to any family gathering if Angela was there. Eventually, Ma stopped asking. She died 5 years later. I went to the funeral, but I left before Angela could speak to me. Your mother died asking you to forgive your sister." Bobby's remaining good eye welled with tears. She had no right to ask that. Angela made her choice. Actions have consequences. "Yes," Lucas said quietly. "They do. And what were the consequences of your choice, Bobby?" "What do you mean? I was the victim. Were you?" Lucas stood, walking to the window. "You lost $48,000. You lost 2 years while you rebuilt. But you did rebuild. Within 5 years, you had your shop. Within 10, you were more successful than you'd ever dreamed. That's not the point. No, it's not." Lucas turned back, and for a moment, Bobby could swear the boy's eyes held infinite sadness. "Angela lost 18 months of freedom. But you lost 30 years of family. You lost your mother's last years of peace. You lost watching your nephews and nieces grow up. You lost every Sunday dinner, every Christmas, every moment of connection that makes life worth living. She took that from me. No, Bobby, you took that from yourself. Angela stole your money. You stole your own life." The monitor beside Bobby's bed began beeping faster. Anger surged through him, but his body was too broken to express it. "You don't understand. The betrayal." "I understand perfectly," Lucas interrupted, his voice still gentle, but now carrying an edge of steel. "Angela made a terrible mistake. She was foolish, desperate, and wrong. She hurt you deeply, and she paid for it, legally and emotionally. She's carried that guilt for 30 years. Good. Is it? Is it good, Bobby? Did her suffering make you happy? Did it fill the hole in your chest where your family used to be?" Bobby wanted to scream yes, wanted to say that justice demanded her suffering, that he'd been right to cut her out, that some betrayals couldn't be forgiven, but the word wouldn't come, because the truth was darker. The truth was that for 30 years, Bobby had woken up every morning and chosen his anger over everything else. He'd built a successful business, sure. He'd made money. He'd dated occasionally, though nothing serious. He didn't trust anyone enough for that. But he'd been alone. Utterly, completely alone. And somewhere in the last decade, The anger had stopped feeling righteous. It had just started feeling heavy. "She wrote to you," Lucas said, "every year on your birthday, for 23 years. Bobby's heart rate spiked on the monitor. "How do you know that?" "I know a lot of things." Lucas moved back to the bedside. "You never opened them. You burned them, every single one. But do you want to know what they said?" "No. The first 5 were apologies. Detailed, heartfelt, explaining how she'd been manipulated, how she'd hit rock bottom, how she understood she'd destroyed your trust. She never made excuses, Bobby. She owned what she did." Bobby closed his eye, but Lucas continued. "Years 6 through 10, she wrote about her life. She'd gotten clean. Did you know she'd developed a drinking problem after prison? She went to AA, got a job as a secretary, met a good man, Frank, a firefighter, married him. They couldn't have kids, but they fostered 3 children who needed homes. I don't care. Year 11, she wrote about Ma's funeral, about how she understood why you left early, about how Ma's last words were hoping you two would reconcile, about how she wished she could take back that one stupid, desperate decision that cost you both so much. Years 12 through 20, she wrote about her foster kids, about Maria, who came to them at 6, abused and silent, who Angela helped learn to trust again, about Deshawn, who'd been in 7 foster homes before theirs, who Frank taught to play basketball, about little Zoe, born addicted to crack, who they nursed through withdrawal and loved into wholeness. Bobby felt something cracking inside his chest, and it wasn't the stroke. She wrote about how fostering those kids taught her that people make terrible mistakes, but they're not defined by their worst moments. That everyone deserves a chance at redemption. That love means choosing to believe in someone even after they've failed you. Stop. Year 21, Lucas continued relentlessly. She wrote that she was sick, breast cancer. She'd beaten it once before, but it was back. She wasn't asking you to come. She just wanted you to know she'd never stopped being sorry and never stopped loving her big brother. Years 22 and 23 were shorter. The chemo made it hard to write, but she still sent them, still tried. Lucas paused, letting the silence grow heavy. Year 24, 3 months ago, there was no letter. Because Angela died, Bobby, in a hospice in Staten Island, surrounded by her husband, her foster children, and about 40 people whose lives she'd touched and changed. But not her brother. Never her brother. Bobby's tears flowed freely now, though only from his left eye. The right side of his face remained frozen, paralyzed, as immobile as he'd kept his heart for 3 decades. She's dead? 3 months ago, Frank tried to call you. You didn't answer. I didn't know the number. You knew it was a New York area code. You chose not to answer. The monitors around Bobby were going crazy now, his blood pressure spiking, his heart rate erratic. But it wasn't the stroke killing him. It was the weight of 30 years of pride crushing whatever was left of his soul. I can't breathe. That's guilt, Bobby. That's what happens when you finally stop running from it. What do I do? She's dead. I can't fix this. Lucas sat back down, taking Bobby's paralyzed hand in both of his small ones. Bobby couldn't feel the touch, but somehow he could feel the warmth radiating from it. Angela's gone, Lucas said softly. You can't apologize to her. You can't take back the 30 years. But Bobby, she has family. Frank is 62 and grieving. Maria is 29. Deshawn is 27. Zoe is 24. They just lost the only mother they ever really knew. They don't want to hear from me. They probably hate me. They don't even know you. Angela never spoke badly of you. She told them her brother lived far away and they drifted apart. She protected you even in death. Bobby sobbed, a horrible, choking sound that barely made it past his paralyzed throat. Why? Why would she do that? Because that's what love does, Bobby. Real love. It protects, it hopes, it forgives, even when forgiveness isn't earned or returned. The room seemed to be growing dimmer. The machine's sounds more distant. I'm dying, aren't I? Yes, Lucas said simply. But you still have a choice. You can die alone, holding onto your righteous anger, secure in the knowledge that you never compromised your principles, that you punished Angela exactly as much as you thought she deserved. Lucas's grip tightened on Bobby's hand. Or you can die having made one call, one message left with a man who just lost his wife, 3 young people who lost their mother, telling them that their mother was right about family, that her brother was wrong, that she was loved and forgiven, even if she never got to hear it. They'll think I'm a coward, waiting until everyone's dead to suddenly care. Maybe. Or maybe they'll think you're human, flawed, broken by hurt, just like everyone else, but trying, even at the last possible moment, to do the right thing. Bobby's vision was tunneling now. He could barely see Lucas's face. I don't know if I can. Even now, the anger. It's been who I am for so long. I know, Lucas whispered, but anger isn't who you are, Bobby. It's just the cage you built. And you have about 3 minutes to decide if you're going to die in that cage or if you're going to finally let yourself out. The nurse rushed in, responding to the alarming monitors. She started barking orders, other staff flooding in. Code blue procedures. But Bobby wasn't paying attention to them. He was looking at Lucas, who stood calmly in the corner, untouched by the chaos. The boy nodded toward the bedside table where Bobby's phone sat. I can't move. I can't talk. Your left hand works. You can dial. And your voice, Bobby, if you want it badly enough, you can find it for 60 seconds. But you have to choose. Right now. Bobby's left hand trembled as he reached for the phone. The effort was monumental. His fingers fumbled, clumsy and weak. The medical team was working frantically. Someone was talking about intubation, about emergency measures. Bobby managed to unlock his phone. His contacts list. He scrolled, past empty entries, business associates, people he hadn't spoken to in years. And there, buried deep in the deleted contacts he'd never quite managed to permanently erase. Frank Morrison. He pressed dial. 3 rings. 4. Bobby's heart was shuddering in his chest like a dying engine. Hello? A man's voice, wary of the unknown number. Bobby's mouth moved. No sound came. He tried again, forcing air through paralyzed vocal cords. Hello? Who is this? Frank, Bobby managed, the word barely human. Angela's brother. Silence on the other end. Shocked silence. Bobby Castellano. I'm sorry. Bobby forced out, each word costing him everything. Tell the kids. Loved her. Always loved. I was wrong. So wrong. Bobby, are you? She forgave me. I know. She did. Tell them their mother was the best of us. Bobby's hand dropped, the phone clattering to the floor. The medical team pushed harder, fighting for his life. But Bobby was looking at Lucas, who smiled, truly smiled, for the first time. "Good," the boy said softly. "Now you can rest." Bobby Castellano's heart stopped at 3:47 a.m. At 3:49 a.m., impossibly, it started again. The medical team couldn't explain it. The stroke had been massive. He should have been brain dead. But suddenly, miraculously, his vitals stabilized. His brain activity normalized. When Bobby opened his eyes 6 hours later, the paralysis on his right side had begun to recede. Not completely. He'd need months of physical therapy. But it was there. Movement, sensation, life. Frank Morrison was standing by his bed. "The doctors don't know how you got my number or why you called," Frank said quietly. His eyes were red-rimmed, his face carved with grief. "They found your phone on the floor, my number on the screen." Bobby's voice was weak but functional. "Angela, I'm so sorry." Frank's face crumpled. "She never stopped hoping you'd call." "I know. I was a stubborn, prideful fool. I let anger steal 30 years I can't get back." "No," Frank said, pulling a chair close. "You can't get back 30 years. But Bobby, if you want it, you've got whatever time you have left. The kids are outside. Maria, Deshawn, Zoe. They want to meet their uncle. They want to hear about their mother's childhood, about the brother she never stopped talking about." Bobby wept. "I don't deserve, none of us deserve forgiveness," Frank interrupted gently. "That's why it's called grace." Over the next 3 weeks of recovery, Bobby met his sister's family. He heard stories about Angela's life, the good she'd done, the children she'd saved, the love she'd given freely even when it wasn't returned. Maria brought photo albums. Deshawn asked questions about woodworking. Angela had told him his uncle was a master craftsman. Zoe, quietest of the three, eventually asked the question that mattered most. "Did you love her?" "Yes," Bobby answered, his voice breaking. "I loved her. I just forgot how to show it. I let hurt turn into hate and hate into distance. But I never stopped loving her. I just forgot how to remember." The day Bobby was discharged, Frank brought him a box. "Angela's things. She left instructions. If you ever reached out, I was supposed to give you this." Inside were the letters, all 23 of them in Angela's handwriting, and a 24th written weeks before she died. "Bobby, if you're reading this, it means you finally found your way back. I'm probably gone, but I want you to know I never stopped being your sister. I never stopped hoping, and I forgive you just like I hope you've forgiven me. We both made mistakes, but the biggest mistake would be to die without love. Don't make that mistake. Love the people I loved. Be the uncle I always knew you could be. And remember, forgiveness isn't weakness. It's the bravest thing we ever do. Love, Angela." Bobby pressed the letter to his chest and wept for everything lost and everything miraculously found. They say miracles come in many forms. Sometimes it's a heart that starts beating again. Sometimes it's a man who finds his voice when he's lost everything else. But the real miracle, it's the moment we choose love over pride, forgiveness over justice, connection over isolation. Robert Castellano lived 4 more years after that night. He attended 3 weddings, Maria's, Deshawn's, and Zoe's. He built custom furniture for each of their homes. He spent every Sunday dinner with Frank and the family Angela had created. It wasn't enough time to make up for 30 years. But it was enough to matter, enough to mean something, enough to show that even at our worst, even at our most broken, we can choose differently. When Bobby finally died, peacefully in his sleep, with photos of his family on the nightstand, the funeral was packed. Frank gave the eulogy. The kids spoke about their uncle who'd shown them that it's never too late to choose love. And in the back of the church, unseen by mourners, a young boy with ancient eyes smiled once and disappeared into the light. Because sometimes the greatest miracle isn't escaping death. It's learning how to truly live before it's too late.